My name is Gisele Emerusenge. I was born in 1993. I was born in Burundi and grew up here in Rwanda. I started doing sign language when I was young. I grew up in a neighborhood where we had a deaf child, and she was from our neighborhood, and we also have the same name. Her name was Gisele, and she's still Gisele, of course. So we grew up together. So I started primary school. She was also in primary school. At that time, I remember I was like between 8 and 9 years. So that's when I learned alphabets, sign language alphabets, A, B, C, D. So I learned that in school because I was a stubborn child, I wanted to know that because I used to see the scout people doing that alphabet. So I learned that. I was in P3, primary 3, and then I learned the alphabets. I wanted to be cheating in a class and also teach my siblings so that we will be cheating and talking with our parents without knowing what we're talking about. So at that time, I thought I was learning alphabets and then later in our neighborhood, they moved a family. There was a family. They were new in our neighborhood, and then there Gisele was, and so I could always pass by at her gate when we were coming from school. So I didn't know she was a deaf until when I was going just to disturb her, and then I found out she was a deaf. So from that time, we became friends. Yeah, I was 9 years. So then she taught me some signs up to now. Of course, I went to school. That time I was in primary school and then secondary school as any other child in education. So I go to learn languages. I start with French. Up to now, because we're not using French most of the time, so I'm not good in French because I'm not always using it, but I did French also, and then later studied English, and my native language, Kinyarwanda, and also sign language, the language I was always using. So now, for the work, I think it's always easier for me because I understand English, I understand French, and I understand Kinyarwanda. So it's always easier for me to translate it to sign language because also I do sign language. It's not something that is hard for me because I know the languages. Actually, I think this is what I've been doing from that time when I was introduced to sign language. And even when I was in secondary school, I moved to Apade, and then Gisele and her other friends came to study to our school. It was the first time the school was having deaf students. So I started doing it as an interpreter because even the teacher would call me, please, we want you to help us with these students. Can you tell them this? Can you tell them this? And then even them, they could come to my class. I was in senior 5, and they could come and please, can you please help us? We don't understand physics and chemistry. So I found myself doing that, interpreting for them. So from that time, that was 2010, and then the time I finished secondary school, that gap between doing the national exam and enrolling to university, and still I was doing that job and I was being paid for that. So at that time I was 18 years old, but I was, that's how I started. So from that time up to now, this is what I do. Yes, I did procurement and logistics in university, but still I don't know how to do it. Apart from me studying it and doing my thesis and everything, but I've never gone to that career. So my career is in sign language interpretation, training, and disability consultation. So this is what I've been doing from that time. I started when I was 9 years. That's when I was introduced to sign language to a deaf person who happened to be my best friend. So then when I finished my secondary school, and that was 2011, Yes, 2011. So that time, there was no schools we didn't have a special need education. By now, we do have special need education in the University of Rwanda, URA, but at that time, there was no special needs, many people didn't even know what was sign language and what was disability inclusion or things like that. Apart from people with disability, many people without disability were not interested. They didn't even know what to do it. So there was no university for that, and I had to go to university, of course. So, and again, I was doing it because we didn't have interpreters who were doing it. So I may say, I don't know if I can say it was self-taught or what, but at that time I went to university and still I was doing the interpretation. I was doing interpretation, I was an interpreter up to 2018 when I had to go and pursue my postgraduate. I went to do postgraduate in community-based rehabilitation. Still, it was in that field of disability, inclusion, yeah. So that's when I went to postgraduate. But before, I wasn't, yeah, I may say it was self-taught. There's still a gap in for the deaf people to access services, to access information, and all the services that are available for every Rwandans or every people. But there are still gaps. But if I compare with how we started or how I started, when I started at that time, I may say at least something is happening. Like at least we have something. At least we have, as I said, we have a special need education. In education, we have that. And you are, I think, it started 2013, if I remember well. Already I was in university, so at least we have that. At least we have many projects. We have interpreter, the RBA, just one, though we have one. So at least, but still there's a gap. There is a gap. I said I'm writing a book. In my book, there is it's every situation. For example, I mentioned when I was interpreting in a court, because I also work with national prosecution. Yeah, so I also work with them. So I always go interpret for the deaf people when they're in the court and with all the legal processes. So now there are still gaps, but at least we're here. At least there are some people who know sign language. At least we have something. We have schools that are teaching deaf students, though there are so many gaps. If you go to the court, there are still some gaps. If you go to education, there are still some gaps. So they are, but at least it's not like the way it was back 2000 or 2009 or what. With sign language, if I compare to other countries, you find some other countries, sign language is an official language. They add as an official language because among the people, the citizens of the country, there are this community who don't use the languages that people are using. For example, our official languages, if I may say, well, we have Kinyarwanda, we have English, Swahili. I don't know if Swahili is in there, and French. Yeah, but we don't have sign language. And yet we have a deaf community. We have these people who are Rwandans, but who don't know Kinyarwanda, who don't speak Kinyarwanda, who don't speak English, who don't speak French, and all those kind of languages, but they do speak sign language. They have their language, they have the culture, their culture. So those are the people we live with, our sisters, our brothers, and they are in our community. But they don't access services because their language that they are using by themselves. Like it's their language, not for all the Rwandans. But the misconception is like we still have many people who's wondering, is the sign language, a real language, or it's just like, So now, there are still a debate where people are just wondering, like deaf people, they are advocating for sign language to be recognized as an official language, to be used in the schools and everywhere. But still we have some people who don't understand it, like they don't get it. Like, how come they're Rwandese, but they don't speak Kinyarwanda? Like, you know, because they don't understand who is a deaf person, and like, why can't they speak Kinyarwanda? Because it's not the language they can't speak, but we can we can learn their language, but they can't learn our language. So, like, I think we still have that gap also, that for sign language to be recognized. But on the other hand, we also have the issue of sign language not being harmonized so far. There was a dictionary, sign language dictionary, which was launched in 2023, December, and that was like, for us, we felt like at least we have dictionary, because we were asked, like, you should have a dictionary, you should have a language, you know, all those processes for the language to be recognized. So we still have that. Like, we also still have to work on sign language, to harmonize the sign language that we have. Our everyday life, like our everyday work, whatever we do, most of the time, it's always the challenges, if I may say. I'm sorry to say, but we know when we're interpreting and we find we are doing it among the people who don't understand it, who don't get it. I remember in 2014, it's still happening. I remember I'd gone to interpret for a deaf person. She had HIV, and I was called to the hospital, one of the big hospitals here in Rwanda. They had called me, the director called me, and they say, we have a patient here and we need you to come and help us to tell this person. So I went there, and then I found the deaf person don't know sign language. Another thing is, like, many deaf people in Rwanda, they don't know sign language because they've never gone to school. You know, to know sign language is a language they have to learn. With the families and with our background and where we come from, not all the families are can afford to pay the school for their deaf children, because so far, I'm sorry, I'm talking, you know, I have so many things to share, but because we don't have many schools for the deaf, we don't have many teachers who know sign language, you know, we don't have many of them, and all the schools are not available, and even the schools that we have, they are private ones. Not all parents can afford to pay, so we have many deaf people in Rwanda, they don't know sign language. Yeah. So now, at that time I went there, and she had HIV, and she has been bedridden. She was in her house, she was alone, she was living alone, and then, you know, the house was being closed, locked. She was locked in for a very long time. And then someone in the neighborhood went to check on her, and they found her sleeping, you know. So they brought her to the hospital. At that time when they brought her to the hospital, they wanted to tell her that she was going to take the medication for HIV. And then she had had the medication before, but she stopped. Like, she felt good, and then she stopped. She thought it's like, we know how to take medication. When you finish the medication and you feel good, then you stop. So at that time she stopped. And then again, the HIV came, and then, you know. So they bought her. They wanted me to tell her that she was going to take it for a lifetime. Like, it was a lifetime medication. But it was hard to explain or to go through those processes that they go with HIV positives. Positive, yes, people with HIV. So it's a process. You have to teach them, you have to take these, all the counseling and everything. But she didn't know sign language. It was very challenging for me, like telling her. So I tried all the techniques, like, and, you know, I would just show her some posts, some pictures, showing those STD, and if you don't take medication, you get this, and she could just say, yeah, I know this, I've heard this before, but telling her, like, you have to, everything. It was so hard, it was challenging because she didn't know sign language. So I felt so bad, and this is what we always encounter. This is how we always, we'll be called to the court and they'll be like, this person is a suspect, he's being accused of this and this and this, but this person don't know sign language. So you have to tell the prosecutor is, ordering this, you have to, all those, the legal process, the legal system, how things are, but this person, yes, and this person is suspect and is, yeah, it's a very challenging.
When you encounter such challenges, how do you overcome them?
Yeah, there's a time it happens, and we are interpreters. And most of the time when I'm doing that, I'm an interpreter. And also I have to abide with the ethics, like as a journalist and all the work, we have the ethics that we go. Like we have to respect, we have to follow. But still, as interpreters with the ethics, with the community that we are in, sometimes we find ourselves being advocates. And now being an advocate and interpreter at the same time, it's like, it can't always have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like that because we have to be confidential. We don't have to talk. We are interpreting. We're not talking our words. So it happens so many times. That's the challenge actually we always encounter. And when I'm doing it, and then again, I feel like I can advise these people to do this, but again, with the ethics of being an interpreter, it limits me. There's a time I was in the court and interpreting this person, the deaf suspect, and that time it happens like he didn't know sign language, and then I was with him, with me being a professional interpreter, but I could see there was something like not clear for his case. So I had to go behind and ask, I'm sorry to say this in public, but it happened. At that time, I was very challenged, and I felt so bad for myself that I'm just hiding myself in the ethics of being an interpreter, but I'm not helping here. So I had to stand in the court and ask the judge, and I'm sorry, judge, can I say something in the court? So it's, it's something that's not right. Like, I'm not supposed to stand and say something, but at that time I did it. So the good thing, and I was lucky enough that the judge gave me the words and he said, okay, you can say something. So I explained to him that this person is a deaf person, he doesn't know sign language. So I had to explain who is a deaf person to the judge. And I was just telling him, a deaf person is this person, they have the language, this is how they live in a community. So and the judge was a very good person, and he let me speak out. And I also kept asking me questions, and what do you think you can do, like as a judge, what? So during that time, I felt so good. I was challenged before, but I felt so good, and I did something that I'm proud of. And because later, they had helped the deaf person, and he learned sign language until he knew how to sign, and then came back to the court, and they also found him not guilty.
He was innocent.
Yeah, he was innocent after 4 years when he was in the jail. So they found him innocent, but he has been there for 4 years, and he was supposed to be there for 12 years. So now I felt so proud of myself, and I think that motivated me actually write on the book. We have so many deaf enrolling in the schools. We have many people learning sign language. We also, these days, we're having also an interpreter organization. Now, we've come together, those people have been working in this field. We're forming an interpreter organization. So we also having, actually, let me say it, we also have in November, we have a conference that was going to happen here in Rwanda for sign language interpreters in Africa. So we can see something. There's something. It's going to take some time, but it is happening. Like we see people now, even in the media, we see people in the conferences, they're hiring sign language interpreters. We see people encouraging, we have center here where people come and learn sign language. We have many NGOs sending their staff to learn sign language. So it seems like people now, they see the need of their workplace being inclusive. There's a need that we also have some teachers, they come to study sign language here for themselves, like they pay for themselves. It's like, I have one of them who came and told me, like, I felt guilty when I was in a class with a deaf person, with a deaf student, and I don't know sign language yet, I'm a teacher. So I felt guilty and I wanted to come and learn sign language. So now we see there's something that is going to happen and something that is happening. In education, we have a TTC, teacher training centers, where the students go and do the TTC, you know. So I think if we can have sign language in that, at least if we can have schools available for the deaf students to learn to, if we can have the service providers also knowing sign language and also knowing the needs of people with disability and also knowing what happens when the person doesn't access information, because that's the issue that we have. Even the deaf people don't know sign language. The problem was that they have never gotten a chance to be exposed. It's like having a child and you're not teaching this child anything. So even that the brain and the IQ doesn't develop because there's nothing going in. So I think if we can have the service providers thinking about them having their services available and also accessible for the deaf people and also for education. And the policymakers, if they may enforce the policies and how they're doing it and designing it and also in their mind thinking about deaf people.